I am Sarah Chin, 30, corporate lawyer, the family outcast. They called it the perfect Thanksgiving. George and Eleanor, my parents, laughed, raising their glasses to their new family. But the cheer was just pretense. My phone vibrated, a Swiss bank alert. Shock hit me, an attempted $3.5 million withdrawal from my trust. I forced a smile, focusing on the email headline, "Attempted transfer blocked." The audacity of the betrayal, timed perfectly for the holiday, was the ultimate act of intrigue. This wasn't Thanksgiving, this was a crime scene. The transfer was blocked, but the betrayal was real. Who among them, celebrating loudly just feet away, was the thief, and what dark secret was about to ruin this perfect, fake Thanksgiving? I'm Sarah Chin, 30, a corporate lawyer, a genuine triumph of self-determination. I built my life on long hours, meticulous precision, and strict integrity. My success was a quiet rebellion against the family's manufactured pretense and George and Eleanor's passive indifference. I was respected at my firm, I earned my own power. The $3.5 million trust wasn't a family gift. It was my late grandmother, Judge Eleanor Monroe's, final act of judgment and clarity. She knew the family's financial predators, so she protected my asset via a Swiss trust with complex clauses. That money wasn't just my solvency, it was her ultimate endorsement of my future and my determination to succeed ethically. Judge Monroe protected the asset, but could her legal precision save me from the people she feared the most, my own family, now that their greed had been exposed? The Ross family dynamics were a masterclass in toxic entitlement and elaborate pretense. George and Eleanor, the socialites, operated on conditional approval, valuing only financial power and appearance. They constantly ignored my professional triumph, subtly reminding me that I was the perpetual outsider. Their endless connection centered on Jake, my younger sibling, the family favorite. He was indulged constantly, praised for every foolish, financially reckless startup scheme. My disciplined life, built on determination and integrity, was boring. Their judgment was clear, my success was dull, Jake's potential failure was exciting. Thanksgiving was their annual staging of inherited wealth. A spectacle of manufactured cheer. It reinforced their shallow values and the corrosive fear that underpinned their whole brittle legacy. Their display of power was built on the very things Judge Monroe protected me from. This year, the irony was unbearable, their subtle guilt palpable. The stage was set for their celebration of entitlement, but with the bank alert fresh in my mind, would I finally shatter their perfect pretense and expose the greed hidden beneath their holiday cheer? The annual Thanksgiving speech began, a thinly veiled ceremony of conditional approval. George raised his glass, detailing Jake's exciting startup plans with exaggerated triumph. Not a single word for my corporate law legacy. The disrespect was public and calculated, my chest tightened with raw hurt. Then came the punchline. An indulgent cousin cracked a joke about Sarah making her asset the boring way, not the exciting way. The group erupted in laughter. I masked my pain with a practiced smile, but the underlying tension was boiling. My polite silence was interpreted as weakness. They laughed at my expense, treating my integrity as a joke. But little did they know, their cheap laughter was about to be drowned out by a far more serious judgment, the sound of an irrevocable trust account freeze. I directed a calm smile, a mask of professional self-restraint, across the table. But internally, the bank email alert echoed. It wasn't just this joke, it was a lifetime of conditional approval and being sidelined. I remembered countless Thanksgivings, countless times I was judged for my determination and integrity. The repression finally snapped, transforming into cold, quiet fury. I was no longer the little girl seeking their approval. They see me as a silent asset, a bank for Jake's failures. My grandmother's legacy is not their punchline. My resolve hardened. I would not be their target, I would not react emotionally. I would strike with legal precision and documented proof. The time for emotional reaction was over. But how quickly could I move from quiet fury to legal precision when the person I had to stop might be sitting right across the table? I excused myself, needing air and precision. In the hallway, I discreetly checked the bank alert again. The headline was static, but the technical details had updated. Someone had attempted to move funds toward an account linked to a specific entity. The tension was suffocating. I tapped the routing information. The entity name, though partially redacted, felt familiar. A sinking realization hit. The account was connected to Jake's most recent, ridiculous startup, the very plan George had just toasted. The timestamp was even worse, 4 a.m. this morning. This wasn't random fraud. This was a targeted, internal betrayal with a clear connection to the family's entitlement. My alarm escalated. The sheer audacity demanded a response driven by legal determination. With the connection confirmed, the theft was tied directly to the family's beloved project. My quiet fury gained a cold, legal focus. Now, the question was not if I would strike, but what steps of precision I needed to take before returning to that table of thieves. I would not give them the satisfaction of an emotional reaction. My corporate training kicked in, prioritize precision over pain. I would gather facts and strike with legal power. I quickly drafted a text to my friend, a partner at my firm, detailing the situation and the immediate need to freeze the entire Swiss trust account under the protective clauses. My grandmother's legacy was not just a $3.5 million asset, it was a testament to her judgment and my only genuine connection outside of their conditional approval. This theft was an assault on my integrity. I asked my friend to process the freeze request immediately, sending me the receipt for documented proof. No more accusations based on fury. Only incontrovertible legal steps. The phone slipped back into my jacket. The email headline, "Attempted transfer blocked," was still visible in my mind, fueling my resolve. I smoothed my dress, regaining my corporate lawyer composure. It was time to return to the table, not as Sarah the victim, but as Sarah, the executor of Judge Monroe's will, ready for the climax. The trust was being frozen, the precision was set. But how would I maintain my cold resolve while sitting across from the people who had just tried to steal my entire legacy? I retreated to the empty study. My attorney friend messaged back, "Trust frozen. Receipt attached." A wave of professional relief washed over me. The asset was safe for now. But the immediate triumph was overshadowed by the need for more precision. I scrolled through the supporting documents, hunting for the ultimate clue, the destination. The friend had also secured the routing information before the system locked down. I zoomed in on the details of the intended recipient. It wasn't a standard offshore account. The final routing number pointed, indirectly, to a local bank that frequently handles accounts for the socialite community's pet projects. My heart pounded, not from fear, but from the sudden, terrible realization of connection. My legal training demanded objectivity, but the truth hit like a physical blow. The account was registered under a discrete holding company, a shadow entity, that my parents' accountant often used. The subtle hints became loud evidence. Someone inside the family's trusted social circle had facilitated the attempt. This wasn't just entitlement, it was an orchestrated, cold-blooded betrayal orchestrated to seize Judge Monroe's entire legacy. The shock was complete. I felt a profound, chilling sense of fury. The theft was facilitated by an inside connection, and the legacy of my grandmother was now a battleground. How could I return to the table and confront their entitlement when my hands were shaking with the fury of this calculated betrayal? I returned to the table, my corporate mask firmly in place. The food was served, and George made a final, grand toast to family solvency and new opportunities. My opportunity. I seized the moment. Speaking of opportunities, I had a thought regarding Jake's startup. Are we planning on significant future family asset investments to ensure its solvency? I directed the question, calm and pointed, toward George and Eleanor. George laughed, too loudly. Eleanor, with practiced charm, brushed me off. Darling, don't worry your pretty head about business precision on Thanksgiving. We're all celebrating Jake's determination right now. Don't spoil the peace with finance talk, sweetie. They deflected the core issue of entitlement, trying to redirect the focus back to my supposed paranoia and boring legal life. I pressed the issue, maintaining a lawyer's resolve. I'm merely ensuring the family legacy is protected against any unexpected risk. Given the scale of the plans, integrity demands clarity. George's smile evaporated, his eyes hardened with unconcealed anger. Everything is handled, Sarah. Your judgment isn't needed here. Focus on the turkey. A small domestic explosion was narrowly avoided, but the air was thick with unspoken threats. Everyone at the table sensed the simmering conflict. My parents refused to break their pretense, but their anger confirmed their guilt. With the civil approach failing, what ruthless legal strategy would I deploy next to finally force their hands and expose their betrayal? After dinner, while the family settled into their customary post-feast exhaustion, I slipped away. My laptop became my weapon. With my friend guiding me remotely, I dug deeper into the financial precision of the blocked transaction. The freeze was a triumph, but the investigation needed to continue. We were hunting for digital breadcrumbs, the real source of the attempted theft. The routing information led us to the first major clue, a third-party payment processor, one notorious for obscuring origins. This indicated active planning, not impulse. The processor trail quickly led to a shell entity, a holding company linked directly to one of Jake's key business contacts. The connection wasn't accidental. It was carefully managed. The scale of the betrayal was becoming immense. This required legal gymnastics, not just a simple hack. The scheme involved attempting to reassign the asset through a fraudulent lien waiver, disguised as a legitimate security instrument for Jake's company. They needed specialized help. We uncovered a notary record that appeared suspiciously backdated, suggesting complicity from someone with legal power and integrity access. The implication was sickening. This wasn't Jake stealing pocket money, this was a coordinated, high-level attempt by multiple parties to strip me of Judge Monroe's entire legacy. Their entitlement was so boundless, they felt justified in engaging in fraud. Leveraging professional precision to execute a crime. The fury was no longer quiet, it was a cold, searing fire that fueled my determination. The evidence was incontestable, this was premeditated. It shattered any lingering hope that this was a misunderstanding. Their whole performance of family connection was a sham designed to mask their criminal intent. They saw my asset as their communal trough. My judgment was sealed, they deserved the full, unsparing force of the law. I vowed to use my own legal skill to turn their lives upside down. I closed the laptop, the screen reflecting the determined, hardened look in my eyes. The turkey was probably cold, but the conflict was just heating up. I had the forensics, the precision, and the undeniable proof of their betrayal. Now, it was time to leave the quiet study and return to the dining room for the main event, the climax of their carefully constructed holiday pretense. I had irrefutable evidence of their criminal betrayal and a cold, powerful determination. How would their meticulously crafted pretense survive when I used my own legal precision to expose the breathtaking scale of their Thanksgiving conspiracy? I cornered George and Eleanor away from the guests, near the unlit fireplace, a perfect stage for their deceit. I maintained legal precision, not emotion. I have confirmation that an attempted transfer was made this morning from the trust. It was traced to an entity connected to Jake's business plans. I need an immediate, honest explanation, without the usual family pretense. George's face immediately turned crimson. How dare you interrupt Thanksgiving with this paranoia, Sarah? Your legal skill has made you suspicious of shadows. The bank alert is obviously a mistake. Your grandmother's legacy is perfectly safe. Do you truly think we, your parents, would jeopardize your asset? His volume rose, fueled by aggressive, feigned anger. Eleanor stepped in, perfecting the art of gaslighting. Darling, are you well? You're letting your work tension ruin the peace. We never discuss finances on holidays. George only signed papers for Jake's solvency, perfectly standard approval. Don't let your little bank alert create such unnecessary conflict. You are overreacting, the injustice hit with crushing force. I was holding the receipts, the forensic evidence, the proof of their calculated betrayal, and yet I was the one being accused of paranoia. My integrity meant nothing to them. They were executing their familiar family dynamics: when cornered, deny, then make the accuser look mad. They traded on Jake's entitlement and their own assumed power. The bank alert is not a mistake. The Swiss trust requires specialized documents for any transaction. I have the tracing data. George sneered, displaying pure contempt. You always make things so difficult, Sarah. Why can't you just accept our approval and let us handle things? Your obsession with precision is ruining our holiday connection. Their refusal to even acknowledge the evidence caused my last hope for honest reconciliation to utterly collapse. The choice was made. My only path to justice lay outside their manipulative dynamics. Their judgment of me as paranoid was their ultimate strategy to maintain power. They would never concede their guilt. I realized my only weapon left was the law itself. I had to pivot from defense to offense, using legal determination to shatter their pretense and secure Judge Monroe's legacy once and for all. Their gaslighting failed to break my legal determination, but it forced me to choose: continue a futile fight for approval, or unleash the full legal power of Judge Monroe's legacy and shatter their Thanksgiving pretense. Their denial was complete, their pretense absolute. There was no family connection left to salvage. I performed the ritual of a polite farewell, my voice steady, my eyes cold. George and Eleanor watched me go with a mixture of suspicion and relief, relieved their conflict had been temporarily smothered. I was the perpetual outsider, and now I embraced that isolation. Once in my car, the mask came off. The memory of their sneering judgment, calling my precision paranoia, fueled my engine of fury. Their entitlement dictated that my asset was theirs for the taking, simply because they possessed the power of parental approval. I analyzed the situation with the brutal objectivity of a corporate lawyer preparing for a hostile takeover. My determination crystallized: I would strike independently and without warning. This wasn't about seeking their love, it was about protecting Judge Monroe's legacy and exacting justice for the assault on my integrity. I reviewed my legal skill set. The first step was to secure a restraining order against any further movement of the trust asset and subpoena the accountant's records. My next call was not to my friend, but to a forensic specialist. I needed to know the full extent of the betrayal. Were George and Eleanor only passively complicit, or were they actively guiding Jake? The tracing data confirmed a direct digital connection between George's private office server and the timing of the failed transfer. The evidence was no longer indirect, it pointed to a deliberate, planned conspiracy. This level of premeditation transcended mere entitlement, it was fraud. They had weaponized my brother's failure and their familial power against me. My final, cold judgment was cast: there would be no more talks of reconciliation or family peace. They had forced my hand. I would use the full force of my professional precision to dismantle their lives piece by piece. The revenge would be meticulous, legal, and absolute. I began drafting the first complaint, focusing on civil fraud and elder abuse, Jake abusing George's approval to gain access. I was using my skill to turn their own privileged system against them. The Thanksgiving turkey had gone cold, but my legal fury was white-hot. The game was no longer about family, it was about power and ultimate solvency. I checked the time. The court's open at 9 a.m. tomorrow. I smiled, a cold, lawyer's triumph. I had the documents and the determination. My legacy was safe, and theirs was about to crumble. The Civil War was over, the legal battle was beginning. They thought they had temporary peace, but would their pretense survive the 9 a.m. court filing that was about to strip away their last vestiges of power and expose the truth about their criminal betrayal? The following morning, I orchestrated a brief, formal return to the house under the pretense of collecting forgotten items. The family was gathered, already tense from the lingering conflict. I wasn't there for reconciliation. My legal precision was my only shield. I stood in the middle of the room, holding the printed freeze confirmation. I regret to inform everyone that due to a serious fraudulent activity detected yesterday, the Judge Monroe Swiss Trust, the asset valued at $3.5 million, has been placed under an immediate, irreversible freeze. No funds can be accessed by anyone, effective immediately. The air in the room instantly went cold, shattering the last remnants of their fake peace. George and Eleanor exchanged terrified, hushed looks. Jake started to speak, but I held up a hand. I know the freeze order is necessary because the attempted withdrawal was routed towards an entity linked to Jake's business partner. I read a few redacted lines of the tracing evidence aloud, citing account numbers and the timing of the premeditation. The room descended into hushed panic. Those guests and relatives who were banking on George and Eleanor's continued solvency, and perhaps a quick loan, fidgeted. The silence was heavy with guilt and sudden financial fear. I saw the pure, unadulterated anger in George's eyes. My act was the ultimate disrespect to his authority. The Swiss bank's action was swift, and mine was swifter. I have filed for injunctive relief in the trust's jurisdiction, and local subpoenas are being processed to unmask the shell entity. This is no longer a family conflict. This is a matter of civil fraud, criminal betrayal, and the pursuit of justice for Judge Monroe's legacy. I delivered the courtroom threat with chilling determination. Their pretense had crumbled, replaced by financial panic. But with their entitlement and anger exposed, would they immediately retaliate, or had the chill of my legal precision finally silenced their criminal betrayal? Jake erupted, his privileged entitlement finally meeting real consequences. You are destroying our family for a few legal technicalities, Sarah. Why are you always so obsessed with precision? Why can't you just approve the money like a normal sister? This isn't about justice, it's about your pathetic need for power. His fury was the sound of a spoiled child realizing his trust fund was empty. George's face crumpled from anger to desperate fear. Sarah, you don't understand the full financial solvency situation. Eleanor and I only agreed to sign the papers to help Jake maintain his legacy. It was a small risk. Think of the family connection. We never intended for your asset to be fully lost. Please. We can make this right, before the public exposure. His plea confirmed his active betrayal and guilt. Eleanor, however, maintained her toxic pretense. Sarah, you have always been the difficult one. You built your life on isolation and judgment. We tried to give you a family approval, but your determination only leads to conflict. If you file this lawsuit, you will utterly destroy any hope of reconciliation and peace. This is your final chance. Her words were a final, chilling rupture of any mother-daughter connection. I looked at them, Jake, panicked and entitled, George, pleading and weak, Eleanor, cold and manipulative. Their collective judgment of me was irrelevant. My only ally was my integrity and Judge Monroe's legacy. My only power is the truth. The freeze is permanent. The filings are already in place. My precision demanded it. Your last chance for reconciliation was before 4 a.m. yesterday. When you executed the fraud, I turned and walked away, leaving behind the wreckage of their Thanksgiving pretense. The stunned silence was my ultimate triumph, a far more satisfying judgment than any petty verbal win. My determination had protected my solvency and honored my grandmother's will. The conflict was ugly, but the justice was clean and absolute. The rupture was final. I walked to my car, leaving their gilded prison behind. I had the power now, the legal skill to finish this. The only thing left was to see the full financial legacy of their entitlement and their betrayal unfold in court. The rupture was complete, the pretense destroyed, and the fight had moved to my terrain, the courtroom. But how far would my family go to escape the judgment of the law, and what final, devastating price would I have to pay for my unwavering integrity? I had walked back in, determined to end their pretense completely. I didn't raise my voice, my authority came from my legal precision. The Swiss bank traced the originating IP. The transfer attempt was initiated from George's private office server at 4:03 a.m. yesterday. Now, stop the gaslighting. Which of you was running the clock on the trust asset? George collapsed into a chair, his face white with fear and guilt. It was Jake. He told me the papers were just for a short-term liquidity loan. He needed my approval because the trust technically manages Jake's company stock. Eleanor helped me sign the documents. His weak admission confirmed their joint betrayal, trading my integrity for their favored son's entitlement. Eleanor remained stiff, clinging to the last threads of her social pretense. Jake needed that solvency for his legacy. He's the son. You already have your career and your money. You will stop this, Sarah, or you will never speak to us again. We will use our social power to ruin your firm. Our determination is stronger than your fury. Her threat was empty, fueled by desperation, but the conflict was tangible. I finally named them, stripping away their approval and connection. The subpoena is filed against Jake Ross for fraud. George and Eleanor Ross are named as co-conspirators. Your attempt to transfer $3.5 million from my asset for Jake's failed startup is now public court evidence. You leveraged Judge Monroe's will for entitlement. That is the final judgment. The isolation I had felt for years was now complete, but empowering. I dropped the printout of the court documents onto the antique dining table, the sound sharp and final. There will be no reconciliation. My legal skill is now dedicated to ensuring the full weight of the law. The very system you rely on for your power delivers justice. This is not personal, this is precision. My exit this time was not a farewell, it was a victorious retreat. The triumph was cold, but absolute. I left them in their panic, their entitlement finally meeting its match in my cold determination. I had exposed the fraud and protected my legacy. But what was the true, irreversible cost of using legal precision to achieve family justice? The fight for my legacy was won, the betrayal exposed, and the accused named. But with the family's social power still intact, how far would they go to fight my legal precision in court, and what final, painful revelation about my grandmothers will await us all? George found his voice, fueled by decades of unquestioned power. You are cut off. You will never receive another dime of family asset. We will hire the best defense skill. You will lose your license, Sarah. We will crush your firm. You will pay for this disrespect and ruin the rest of your pathetic life with isolation. His threat, however, was a predictable and empty defense, entirely lacking precision. You can try. But you already missed the most critical legal detail. I pulled out the final document, a clause from Judge Monroe's will. The Swiss trust stipulates that should any beneficiary, or immediate family member acting on their behalf, attempt unauthorized liquidation or fraud against the trust asset, that beneficiary forfeits all legacy interest. I directed my gaze at Jake. Jake, you were the primary beneficiary of the contingent remainder interest, the last $1.5 million after the initial distribution. By signing those fraudulent documents and utilizing George's approval to attempt the transfer, you triggered the forfeiture clause. Your legacy interest is extinguished. Permanently. The justice was brutal, matching the scale of his entitlement. Eleanor let out a sound of pure, visceral grief, completely shattering her pretense. No. You can't. That was for Jake's solvency. His future. You always hated him, Sarah. You planned this. You knew this clause was there. This is not precision. This is your fury. Your judgment against us. Her emotional collapse was the only genuine moment of the evening, confirming her deep-seated guilt. They had attacked the trust, but they hadn't read the whole will. Jake's forfeited share reverts, not to the main family asset, but to the residual beneficiary. Judge Monroe understood their entitlement would be their undoing. The residual beneficiary, named in the final codicil of the will, is the executor. I pointed to myself. Me. The $1.5 million is mine, legally and absolutely. George staggered back, realizing the depth of the premeditation, not mine, but his mother's. Mom. Mom knew. She put that clause in specifically for Jake. She never gave us her full approval. His realization of his mother's ultimate judgment and distrust was his final betrayal wound. The family dynamics were exposed. The grandmother had never trusted any of them. I had secured my legacy twice, once by blocking their fraud with my precision, and once by inheriting the very funds they craved. The room was toxic with fury and the wreckage of their entitlement. I took a deep breath, feeling utter detachment. They were no longer family, they were adverse parties in a civil case. My determination was complete. I placed my cold, precise lawyer's card on the table, next to the court documents. For any further communication, please contact my firm. We can discuss your upcoming depositions. I walked out slowly, deliberately, the sounds of their sobbing and desperate accusations fading behind me. My final triumph was the silence of their absolute defeat. Back in my office, the air was clean, devoid of the family's suffocating pretense. The conflict was now safely compartmentalized. I was reviewing the first formal response from George's hired counsel, a predictable attempt at minimizing the guilt. My precision demanded a full legal assault, not negotiation. My friend messaged me the news. Jake's startup had lost its primary investors after the court filings revealed the financial turmoil and the extent of his entitlement. Jake's venture, his supposed legacy, was collapsing. He was isolated, his pleas for family connection now hitting the wall of legal consequences. The immediate fallout was satisfyingly swift. The most impactful stroke was the injunction freezing George and Eleanor's communal asset to cover potential legal fees. Their social power relied on their solvency, and the legal stop threatened both. I hadn't attacked them directly, but my defense of the trust had collateralized their lives. My determination had turned their privilege against them. The judgment was cold, clean, and justified. The consequences were setting in, shattering Jake's legacy and freezing my parents' power. But with their financial solvency now under my legal precision, would they finally abandon their pretense and seek reconciliation, or would their stubborn entitlement force them into a brutal courtroom battle? Back in my office, the air was clean, devoid of the family's suffocating pretense. The conflict was now safely compartmentalized. I was reviewing the first formal response from George's hired counsel, a predictable attempt at minimizing the guilt. My precision demanded a full legal assault, not negotiation. My friend messaged me the news. Jake's startup had lost its primary investors after the court filings revealed the financial turmoil and the extent of his entitlement. Jake's venture, his supposed legacy, was collapsing. He was isolated, his pleas for family connection now hitting the wall of legal consequences. The immediate fallout was satisfyingly swift. The most impactful stroke was the injunction freezing George and Eleanor's communal asset to cover potential legal fees. Their social power relied on their solvency, and the legal stop threatened both. I hadn't attacked them directly, but my defense of the trust had collateralized their lives. My determination had turned their privilege against them. The judgment was cold, clean, and justified. The consequences were setting in, shattering Jake's legacy and freezing my parents' power. But with their financial solvency now under my legal precision, would they finally abandon their pretense and seek reconciliation? Or would their stubborn entitlement force them into a brutal courtroom battle? The weeks following the filing were quiet. Too quiet. My physical isolation was complete, no calls, no texts, only legal correspondence. Yet, this wasn't the paralyzing isolation of my youth. This was self-imposed peace. The constant tension of pretending to seek my parents' approval was gone. I traded the family conflict for true solvency, mental and emotional. I spent hours in my grandmother's old armchair, rereading her will. I finally understood, the legacy wasn't the money, but the test. She knew their entitlement would surface. She didn't trust them, and she needed my determination to prove her judgment correct. I was vindicated, not just legally, but personally. My lifetime of being branded the difficult one was actually the basis of my integrity. The fear of losing the family connection had vanished, replaced by a fierce sense of purpose. I started focusing on my career, not as a defense mechanism, but as an expression of my true skill and precision. The $1.5 million inheritance didn't change my lifestyle, it cemented my independence. I used a portion to fund a pro bono legal clinic, a new legacy built on genuine justice, not family pretense. My friend called, worried about the toll of the conflict. "Are you okay? You haven't seen them since you dropped the documents. This is a massive rupture. The rupture happened years ago, when they chose Jake's entitlement over my integrity. Now, it's just formalized. My fury is gone, replaced by the clean execution of judgment. I am at peace, knowing the truth has power." I learned to view George and Eleanor's attempts at counter-lawsuits, their final, desperate cling to power, with complete detachment. Their actions were no longer personal attacks, they were legal documents that required a calculated, precise response. I was the guardian of the trust, and their fraud was merely a technicality to be corrected. The emotional conflict had died, only the legal framework remained. The hardest part of the personal reckoning was accepting that I would never have the loving family connection I once craved. But in its place, I gained true integrity. My legal judgment was sound, their moral judgment was bankrupt. The finality of the rupture allowed me to step fully into my power. I was Sarah Chen, the lawyer, the executor, the inheritor, and the protector of my own will. I looked back at the expensive gates one last time, recognizing that my family had only ever offered conditional approval based on my compliance. I had rejected their condition. My determination had won. The legacy of Judge Monroe was safe, and so was my soul. I had found peace outside of the family conflict. But the legal fallout was still ongoing. With my personal peace and solvency secured, I had achieved true growth. But as the legal consequences continued to erode my family's remaining power and asset, what final, desperate action would they take before accepting my ultimate judgment? The civil suits against George and Eleanor eventually settled. They paid a hefty sum from their remaining asset to cover the trust's legal fees, a bitter taste of justice delivered by my legal precision. Jake was forced to liquidate his startup. Their power was reduced, their social pretense shattered. The conflict was formally closed, not with fanfare, but with the dry finality of a court order. I sat in my office, signing the documents to create the Judge Monroe Legal Aid Foundation. This was the true purpose of the $1.5 million. My grandmother's final will was to ensure her legacy promoted justice and helped those without the skill or power to fight family entitlement. I honored her memory by building something real from the wreckage of their betrayal. I never spoke to George, Eleanor, or Jake again. The rupture was absolute. Yet, I had found a profound peace. My determination was no longer defensive, it was constructive. I had proved my integrity not by seeking their empty approval, but by upholding the rule of law. My true family connection was to my grandmother's will, and my true solvency was my self-respect. The story of my revenge wasn't a tale of dramatic, emotional fury. It was a testament to the quiet, cold power of precision and determination. When facing family betrayal, sometimes the most devastating weapon you have is not anger, but a fully executed legal document. Justice isn't always loud, sometimes it's just meticulous. The conflict was over, my legacy secured, and the foundation built. But now that I have achieved ultimate justice and peace, what lessons can you, the audience, take from the cold, powerful precision I used to end my family's cycle of entitlement and betrayal? After the settlements were finalized, I knew one thing was essential: a public statement to formalize the rupture and set the boundary. I was finished dealing with their attempts at reconciliation based on lies. This was not a moment for fury or judgment, but for calm, legal precision. I stood before the cameras, representing only my own integrity. Today, the civil matters concerning the Judge Monroe Trust asset and allegations of fraud have been formally concluded. The trust has been fully secured, and its legacy is confirmed. This action was taken solely to protect the will and fulfill my duty as executor. The results affirm the determination of the court in upholding the law and delivering justice. To prevent any future conflict, the family relationship with George, Eleanor, and Jake Ross is permanently terminated. This is not a matter of reconciliation, it is the establishment of a necessary, permanent boundary. My focus now is on my professional skill and the new legal foundation built on true solvency and integrity. I looked directly into the camera. This was my statement to the extended family and society. I would not tolerate their conditional approval or their toxic entitlement ever again. My silence had been mistaken for weakness, my precision was my ultimate strength. They had relied on the power of social pretense, but I had won with the power of undeniable fact and law. I took no questions. I simply nodded once, acknowledging the press, and walked away. The physical withdrawal mirrored the emotional one, clean, absolute, and final. The end of the family conflict didn't feel like triumph, it felt like coming home. I was finally at peace, free from the shadow of their betrayal and the endless need for reconciliation. My judgment against them was not a petty act of revenge, but the necessary defense of my integrity. The story is a harsh lesson. When family connection is built on manipulation and entitlement, you must be willing to burn the bridge to save your soul. My determination was the match, and my legal skill was the fire. The public boundary was set, the rupture finalized, and I had achieved true peace. But after walking away from my family's toxic legacy and securing my own solvency, what does true independence look like for a lawyer whose greatest skill was dismantling the very system that created her? Even after the legal closure and my public statement, the story wasn't truly finished. My former family couldn't simply fade into obscurity. The first wave of their reaction, leaked to my friend, was predictable, a torrent of fury and blame aimed entirely at me. I was the architect of the conflict, the destroyer of the legacy, the one lacking any connection. George, stripped of his easy power and facing severe liquidity issues from the legal fees, immediately deflected. Sarah acted with malicious premeditation. This wasn't about justice, it was about her lifelong determination to be the only one with financial solvency. She manipulated her grandmother's will to satisfy her cold judgment. Eleanor's response was a masterpiece of social pretense. She orchestrated controlled leaks to society blogs, portraying herself as the long-suffering matriarch betrayed by a vengeful daughter. We extended an offer of reconciliation to Sarah, but her fury and isolation were too complete. She chose money and skill over family approval. We pray she finds peace. Jake, whose legacy was now rubble, was the most pitiful. His entitlement turned inward. I hope you enjoy my $1.5 million. It won't buy you happiness. You'll always be the black sheep, the one who destroyed the family connection. You should have had the decency to accept my betrayal and move on. His total lack of guilt or self-awareness was chilling evidence of his moral bankruptcy. The sheer volume of their coordinated blame campaign was exhausting, even from a distance. It was a final, desperate attempt to reclaim the moral high ground and negate my judgment. They framed the entire conflict as my personal failing, my inability to conform to their toxic will, rather than their criminal premeditation and deep-seated entitlement. My firm advised me to issue a firm cease and desist regarding the slander. But I opted for silence. Every deflected accusation, every distorted quote, was a final, unwanted connection, a bitter tether to the past. Engaging would only give their fury more power. My silence was the ultimate boundary, the last act of my calculated precision. The triumph was real, the asset was safe, and my integrity was intact. But watching their slow, public demise from a distance felt less like sweet revenge and more like watching a natural disaster. I had won everything: money, justice, freedom, but the victory was hollowed out by the absolute rupture and the recognition that they would never change. Then came the single, final, heartbreaking text message from Eleanor, several months later. Not an apology, but a final plea for her conditional approval. George is ill. We need you. If you come home and use your skill to help us manage this, we can pretend this never happened. We can be a family. It was the ultimate test. They still offered peace in exchange for my surrender, in exchange for my solvency and integrity. I simply deleted the text. No reply. The boundary was not a fortress, it was empty space. My only connection now was to the ethical and professional legacy I was building. My isolation was the price of my freedom. I realized that the greatest power I gained wasn't the inherited money, but the determination to walk away from conditional love and toxic approval. My precision won the battle, but my integrity won the war for my soul. The family was broken, but I was finally whole. Family revenge is rarely simple, it's a necessary excision. It cost me my past, but it secured my future. I had achieved absolute closure. But in choosing isolation over reconciliation, did I sacrifice the final threads of humanity needed for true, lasting peace? My family's final act was an attempt at emotional blackmail, a desperate call for reconciliation based on the same old lie. But after achieving my legacy and peace through total isolation, was the price of my integrity the permanent loss of all human connection, or was my final choice the ultimate act of self-preservation? I had chosen isolation over toxic reconciliation, but true peace doesn't mean being alone. It means being surrounded by people who respect your integrity. The first person to step forward was my mentor, the senior partner, who offered not just his professional approval, but genuine connection. He saw my determination and my skill, not my family's judgment. The press attention on the settlement, though focused on the family conflict and entitlement, actually generated unexpected support. I received dozens of emails from strangers and colleagues, sharing their own stories of family betrayal and praising my legal precision. I wasn't the difficult one in the world, I was a warrior for justice. The launch of the Judge Monroe Legal Aid Foundation was my true triumph. My friend and the mentor stood beside me. The $1.5 million from Jake's forfeited legacy, the very asset they had tried to steal, was now funding solvency for others. I converted their toxic fury into a positive power, transforming their crime into my grandmother's true will and my own lasting legacy. I started seeing a different kind of connection, one built on mutual respect and shared ethical standards, rather than blood or pretense. I volunteered at the foundation, working alongside other dedicated lawyers. I traded the gilded cage of family approval for a genuine community. This new tribe didn't offer conditions, they offered collaboration and unconditional support for my integrity. The biggest shift was internal. I was no longer driven by revenge or fury but by the mission. My determination had transformed from a weapon of defense into a tool for change. The skill I had honed to destroy my family's fraud was now dedicated to building justice for others facing similar exploitation and entitlement from those with financial power. The ultimate lesson of my story isn't about the fight, it's about what you build afterward. The conflict shattered my old world, but the pieces allowed me to construct a better one. I learned that isolation isn't the opposite of connection, it's the necessary space to find peace and those who deserve your integrity. The toxic rupture gave way to a powerful new connection and a true legacy. But as I stepped fully into my new life of justice and solvency, what final, subtle act of revenge, or perhaps, just finality, would truly confirm that the story of Sarah Chin and the family entitlement was unequivocally over? My life found a new, fulfilling rhythm. Mornings were spent at the foundation, translating legal precision into genuine justice for those without the financial solvency or power to fight. I traded the high-stakes drama of my family conflict for the grounded, tangible work of true integrity. This was the real peace I'd fought for, far beyond any conditional approval. I was arguing a pro bono case for a young woman whose family tried to misuse her guardianship for her asset. In her vulnerable position, I saw a reflection of my younger self. This case is about premeditation against the vulnerable, leveraging familial connection for financial gain. We demand the court uphold the rule of law and deliver a clear judgment against this entitlement. My determination was fierce, fueled by experience. My mentor joined me afterward. You fought that case with your whole heart, Sarah. That legal skill, it's sharper than anyone I've seen. Your grandmother would be proud. This is her legacy, but it's wholly your triumph. His words confirmed that my battle hadn't been a waste, it was the crucible that forged my true power and established my professional integrity. I reflected on the last message from Eleanor. The initial pang of guilt was gone. I realized their final act of reconciliation was just another form of betrayal, an attempt to drag me back into the toxicity using guilt as a weapon. I had protected my solvency and my mind. The closure of the family conflict allowed me to live without the debilitating weight of their pretense. The true revenge was my happiness, my meaningful connection to the community, and the flourishing of the foundation. Every successful pro bono case was a silent judgment against their greedy will and their bankrupt moral legacy. They wanted me to be consumed by fury, instead, I was elevated by justice. I stood on the roof of my new apartment, overlooking the city skyline, far from the old family estate. The house and their empty social power were relics of a past I had consciously rejected. My legacy wasn't defined by inherited asset, but by the intentional determination to use my skill for good. I had won the battle for the money, but more importantly, I had won the war for my identity. I found a final note tucked into Judge Monroe's old law book. It read, "The greatest power is not the law you wield, but the integrity you keep. Be precise, be kind, and never seek their approval." It was her final judgment, her last offering of peace. I was no longer the difficult one, I was the chosen one, the protector of her true will. I closed the book, smiling. The chain of conditional love was broken forever. The isolation I felt was no longer a wound, but a necessary shield protecting my hard-won integrity. I was financially and emotionally secure. My solvency was mine alone. My family had sought revenge by attempting betrayal, but I found my triumph by achieving justice. My story is a testament that determination and precision can defeat toxic entitlement, allowing you to build a true legacy. But for those of you still caught in the spiral of family conflict and conditional approval, what is the first, brave step you will take today to secure your own integrity and finally find peace? Months turned into a year. My isolation was profound, yet peaceful. Then, a lawyer from George's former firm called. Not for reconciliation, but a sterile request. George was gravely ill. He was asking, not demanding, to see me. The request was devoid of entitlement or pretense. It was a tiny crack in their armor, revealing a flicker of human vulnerability I hadn't seen since I was a child. I spent a day considering it. It wasn't about seeking their conditional approval or falling back into the toxic family connection. It was about closure. My determination had won the war. Now, I needed to confirm the final surrender in person. I called my mentor. Go, Sarah. Not for them, but for your own peace. Go as the lawyer with supreme integrity, not the hurt daughter. The hospital room was sterile, devoid of the family's customary opulence and power. George looked frail, small without his suit and his entourage. Eleanor was there, her usual social pretense replaced by raw, quiet exhaustion. Jake was nowhere to be seen. The scene delivered a final, somber judgment on the years of their materialist fury. George struggled to speak. I was wrong about the will. I tried to block your legacy. I saw your skill, Sarah, but I was blinded by Jake's entitlement. I should have protected your integrity. It wasn't a full apology, but an acknowledgement of his own moral guilt and the accuracy of my legal precision. It was the most honest connection he had ever offered. The will was legally binding. You tried to commit fraud against the trust asset. The conflict had consequences. I accept your acknowledgement, George. But there can be no reconciliation to the past. The bridge is burned. I am here only to confirm your acceptance of the final closure. My determination was gentle but absolute. Eleanor tried to intervene, her eyes pleading for a return to social pretense. Sarah, if you just offer a little approval, for George's peace. I cut her off. No, Eleanor. My peace is separate from your needs. This visit is about honesty, not reconciliation or conditional approval. Your final betrayal was your failure to admit the truth. She retreated, defeated by my unshakable precision. George nodded weakly, accepting the finality. I offered a limited gesture of human kindness, adjusting his blanket. It wasn't forgiveness or reconciliation. It was the closure of the relationship, confirming my moral judgment had been correct. I left, walking away from the physical remnants of the toxicity and their empty power. I had won the triumph not when the money was transferred, but when I walked into that room completely unburdened by the need for their approval. My power was my self-solvency and my determination to protect my integrity. Their greatest defeat was admitting that my legal skill was real, and their betrayal had failed. My grandmother's will ensured the asset was used for justice. My battle ensured my own legacy was built on integrity, not inherited entitlement. The rupture had been necessary for both the trust and my soul. I drove away, ready to return to my new life and my true connection with the Foundation. The limited reconciliation was the final layer of closure. It stripped away the last residue of personal fury and confirmed my peace. The revenge was complete. I had walked away from my entire bloodline to secure my solvency and soul. But in gaining total freedom, what final sacrifices must I make to protect my new legacy and maintain this hard-won integrity? The final act of honesty provided the ultimate closure, confirming my judgment and securing my peace. But after achieving such absolute freedom at the cost of my blood connection, does my new legacy truly shield me from the possibility of new conflict? Or is the fight for integrity a constant battle? The limited reconciliation with George had provided closure, but the future demanded action. My personal triumph was complete, but the fight against toxic entitlement was not. I stood before the board of the Judge Monroe Foundation. The foundation is solvent. Now, we expand our legacy. We won our battle with precision. Now we teach others the skill of legal defense against familial betrayal. I was uniquely positioned. My legal skill was undeniable, my determination unshakable, and my financial solvency was secure. I had the power they had always coveted, but I used it ethically. We initiated a national campaign, offering webinars and legal guides. Our slogan, "Fight Entitlement with Integrity." My story became the evidence that quiet precision could dismantle inherited power. My next big project wasn't just individual defense, but systemic reform. We targeted laws that shielded financial elder abuse, often masked by familial connection. My revenge had matured into legislation. My past fury was now focused political will. I used the family's old network, the very contacts that craved their approval, to push for these changes. The greatest measure of my peace was the profound absence of the old family conflict. The fear of their judgment had completely dissolved. When Eleanor's latest attempt at social pretense surfaced, a thinly veiled attack in a gossip column, it didn't register as a threat, but as a pathetic echo. I was too busy building my legacy to care about their residual blame. My new connection was my partner, a lawyer at the foundation. She admired my determination, my honesty, and my uncompromising integrity. "You fought them with such brutal precision, Sarah. And then you turned that same skill to help others. You don't need anyone's approval because your work is your own will." Her unconditional approval was the only one that ever mattered. The inherited asset was no longer merely money, it was investment capital for change. We established training programs nationwide, ensuring that other black sheep dealing with family betrayal had access to my unique legal blueprint. I converted their greed and premeditation into tools for solvency and freedom for countless others. I finally recognized my own harsh self-judgment had been rooted in seeking my parents' approval. But Judge Monroe's words, "The greatest power is the integrity you keep," freed me. I judged myself based on my ethical skill, my determination, and my commitment to justice. The court of public opinion was irrelevant, the court of my conscience was clear. I boarded a plane for a speaking tour, promoting the foundation's work. I was no longer the wounded daughter fighting for scraps of connection and peace. I was the force that broke a cycle of entitlement. My isolation was a choice of strength, and my legacy was just beginning. The chapter of family revenge was closed, the epic of justice had begun. My determination had saved the trust. My integrity had saved my soul. The toxic conflict had been the forge for my greatest skill and legacy. But for those who face their own cycles of betrayal and premeditation, what power do you truly possess to achieve your own ultimate triumph and lasting solvency? My story is a blueprint. The precision you use for revenge can be transformed into the power to build a legacy of justice. The question for you, the audience, is not whether you can survive family betrayal, but what incredible, unstoppable project you will launch when you finally secure your own integrity and solvency. If you've followed my story, you know the true cost of toxic family conflict and betrayal. That deep fury, that constant search for justice, it's exhausting. But I want you to know, your story is not defined by their will or their entitlement. It is defined by your response. Lesson 1, you are not the conflict, you are the solution. My fight wasn't about revenge, it was about protecting my integrity. They relied on pretense and social approval. I relied on precision and law. Lesson 2, the greatest power is not inherited, it is the integrity you keep. Use your skill not for destruction, but to build your legacy. The power lies not in their wealth, but in your own ethical determination. Lesson 3, true solvency is the freedom from conditional connection. Don't seek their reconciliation or peace on their terms. Your emotional solvency and financial asset are yours alone. Achieving closure requires total isolation from the source of the toxicity. That judgment is hard, but necessary. Build your life outside their shadow. Remember lesson 4, your true connection is to your own future, not their past. And lesson 5, you hold the ultimate power to define your own triumph. If my precision could dismantle a multi-million-dollar fraud built on premeditation, imagine what your focus and skill can achieve. Choose your legacy. Choose justice. I shared my story of revenge and solvency to show you the blueprint for freedom. If you are ready to take the first step toward your own integrity and triumph, tell me in the comments below, What is the single biggest lesson from my journey that empowers you to define your own legacy today?